welcome back to another edition of Global Book Network. Flobo Boys here with you with a fantastic author and a look at what's considered emotional resilience. In fact, when I heard the term, I said, I wonder what that means. So please welcome the author of The Authority Guide to Emotional Resilience in Business, Strategies to Maintain Stress and Weather Storms in Workplace, Robin Hills. How's it going, sir?
It's going great. Thank you for having me on the show, Flobo.
Well, the pleasure is all mine because I am a curious cat, as they say, and I want to know what exactly is emotional resilience. What does that mean?
Well, to distinguish ourselves from machines, to distinguish ourselves from materials, which are supposedly resilient, human beings have resilience due to their emotions and their emotional management. So if we recognize that, we can actually learn to become much more resilient through that.
Oh, wow. And so emotional resilience as a phrase, I would assume incorrectly that okay, how's that different than toughening up or thick skin or being stoic? There's more layers to that. There's nuance to that, is what you're saying.
Well, I think that's one way of looking at it, and I think it's quite a simplistic way of looking at it because as human beings, we go through a range of emotions when we're faced with various different situations and various different environments. And it depends upon what academic paper you read, but we could have anything between 7,000 and 35,000 different emotions. Now, obviously, we haven't got time to look at all of them on the show. But what we have got are a range of basic emotions and understanding a few basic emotions, which help us to engage with people in the workplace or indeed in social settings and at home far
Yeah.
better, which means that we develop coping mechanisms which make us eventually more resilient.
Hmm. Well, this particular book takes a look at the workplace, and I have to ask, was there a particular moment or situation that you were in and you said, hey, look, maybe there's some reinforcement here?
Well, I think a lot of people do talk about being resilient within the workplace. When I wrote the first edition about 10 years ago, everybody was talking about resilience. It seemed to be the big buzzword at the time. And I got the opportunity to write the book, and I took it more to distinguish myself from everybody else that was talking about resilience so that I could say, hey, I've done some work that's researched into what emotional resilience is all about. And lo and behold, I've got a book published. So, whilst everybody else was going along talking about resilience, oh, I'm a resilience expert, I
Yeah.
was actually able to go out there and say, well, actually, I'm an author that's written a book, The Authority Guide to Emotional Resilience in Business. Yeah, I'll have that one. That was
Right.
a title. That was a title that was suggested to me by my publisher because they were developing a series of books at the time called The Authority Guide. So I took The Authority Guide to Emotional Resilience as the title of my book, and I was really pleased that I did because quite a few people afterwards said, "Oh, I wish I could have written The Authority Guide to Resilience."
Right. And what was the research like? Were you like, it was like a spy mission? Were you like looking behind file cabinets to observe workplaces? Or was it more of like a academic approach, old research versus new research? Talking about the actual construction of the authority guide.
It was a little bit of everything there, to be honest with you, Flobo. To be frank, I'm not into a lot of academic research and I'm not into a lot of papers. I studied science as a degree back 40 odd years ago. And whilst I can see the value of it, and I can honestly say, yes, I am a scientist and I take a scientific approach. The more important thing is, well, what does it mean and how do we apply it? So, yeah, I can look at the papers and understand what they mean, but so what? And over my career, I've been really focusing in on the so what questions. So if anybody asks me something to explain something, at the back of my mind, I've got this parrot saying, so what? So what? So what? And it helps me to actually come out with an answer that is a little bit more practical, a little bit more fundamental to what the person wants.
Yeah. Well, Let's dive deep into the actual idea of emotional resilience in the workplace of a given team. I know there's human beings and emotions and needs and wants and desires and paychecks and promotions and all that stuff, but maybe it's kind of an unfair stereotype that businesses are all about growth and making their hay. Does that come across a lot? The human needs, wants, and desires to be seen and heard, and the mechanics of business of just making that money, and how does that really impact people's emotions when they're kind of fighting and working to get their next paycheck versus the business and their goals and trying to expand?
Well, that's a great question there, Flobo, because it really touches on the heart of everything. Why do people get up in the morning? Why do people go out to work? And I think that's a fundamental question that people need to ask around what makes them resilient. Because why do people do what they do? Interesting question. If you actually push and push and push people, you'll actually get to the right answer. And the right answer is because they choose to. Now, we have to go through, oh, I do it to make money, I do it to support my family, I do it for a whole host of different reasons. And I've heard all of them. But the real reason why people go to work is because they choose to. And more often than not, their choice is taken out of their hands. They may have a mortgage, they may have very young children, they may have a nagging partner, they may have a lifestyle which means that they need money. But in order to get the money, what they need to do is to choose the right career path in order to fulfill themselves and to fulfill their obligations. Now, again, it depends upon the person's phase in life. Because when I was bringing up a family, a very young family, I was working in a job that actually I didn't mind. Looking back, I liked it a lot better than what I did at the time. But I was looking for opportunities to be promoted, to grow, to go and do something different. And a lot of those opportunities didn't come my way. So the realization was, well, what's important in life? At this particular moment in life, it's providing for my family. Once my family have grown up and left home, I'm in a different phase of my career and I can actually go away and explore what I wanted to explore and to develop my career in the direction I wanted to develop it rather than being forced by a corporate environment and people telling me I can't be promoted or I can't do this and I can't do that. And it was more a case of I can go and do it if I want to, down to my choice.
Right, right. Over the couple years or so, the very nature of work has changed. I mean, there's a whole pandemic in the middle between edition one and edition two of your book. A lot of people work from home nowadays, and communication has changed, evolved, or devolved, depending how you look at it. What does that look like? The communication changing, and that may assail our own emotions, our drives and desires, and how we can do that, to use those things, those tools, to really fortify our emotional intelligence, resilience, excuse me.
Well, emotional intelligence is a great slip because emotional intelligence is being smart with your thinking and being smart with your emotions and combining the two in order to make good quality decisions. Now, emotional resilience then is an output of emotional intelligence. So, a lot of people will actually see you and refer to you as being emotionally intelligent and resilient. So, it depends upon what model you look at and what academic paper you read, but sometimes resilience is shoved in with emotional intelligence and sometimes it isn't.
Right.
So I prefer to keep them separate. But to go back to your question, yeah, between edition one and edition two, we had the pandemic and we've also had the rise of artificial intelligence, and that changes the way in which people are engaging with the workplace. Hence, we've now got the second edition, which really takes in more of a focus around people working virtually, the emotions involved. It also involves team resilience, and there's a much stronger chapter around team resilience and a much stronger chapter around organizational resilience in the second edition, based upon what we've learned through the pandemic and coming out the other side.
Yeah. During the pandemic, a lot of my friends and or from the creative class were considered non-essential. And that really set me down a path to do this kind of work, this talking with people and businesses, because it felt weird being seen as, yeah, I know I'm not saving lives, but to be deemed non-essential was kind of a blow to my feelings. You know what I mean? And so I wonder how that feels like when we're at home trying to work or trying to reach out or trying to create or whatever that means during a time where it was so uncertain, you know?
It's interesting because a lot of people were deemed as essential when they weren't necessarily essential. I know a lot of people were working in the medical and clinical field, and quite honestly, they are brave men and women who really deserve our respect. But there are other people who needed to go to work and were essential. Sewer workers, people, sewage workers, people working for the water board, people working for the electricity board. Okay, we didn't have quite the need for the traffic control, but there was still traffic on the roads. Um, uh, we still needed policing. Teachers had a very different role and they had to pivot very quickly into teaching and educating online. They were essential and they had much more on their plate in many respects because they had to deal with the psychological well-being of the young people that they were educating. And I think some did far better than others. So, I mean, I've only scratched the surface of some of the essential workers, and apologies to any of those critical ones that I've missed. But I think to actually say that we were redundant because of COVID, I think again is being very simplistic because whatever it is that you do, it has some level of importance. And it's vital to recognize that because that means that you're then focused on achieving an outcome which helps you in terms of developing your resilience.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. You had mentioned artificial intelligence. Friend, foe, tool. Where do you stand?
I'm an emotional intelligence coach, trainer, and facilitator. And in fact, we're talking about the Authority Guide to Emotional Resilience in Business. But I've also got another book that came after that, which is the Authority Guide to Behavior in Business, which really focuses in on emotional intelligence. And in a way, I wish I'd written that book first. But the most important book that's come out of this is the emotional resilience book, and that's because it is vitally needed.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The interplay of technology is definitely important. The reason why I asked you about artificial intelligence, because I've seen it both ways. I've seen people appealing to Chat GPT for motivation. Hey, Chat GPT, I'm doing a good job, right? Please tell me. And also see that a lot of times processes take the human element out of it. And so I wonder where if you were to land on that, what that could be. But I understand.
Oh no, I think it's an absolutely vital question, and thank you for asking it because it's emotional intelligence which sets us aside from machine and machine technology. Yeah, ChatGPT can give you the words that may motivate you, but ChatGPT is not going to pat you on the back when you've done something really well and done something really special. There is a degree of empathy that comes through ChatGPT, but it's not going to pick you up, dust you down, and give you a bit of a hug and push you in the right direction. We need that kind of physical human contact. We're not going to get our motivation from the robots. We will get some superficial level of motivation from the robots, but well, let's have a look at what the robots can't do. The robots can't take risks. The robots can't innovate. The robots have no artistic creativity. Yeah, they can churn out some great looking pictures, but they're not originals. And there's something missing behind them. The robots have no ethics. The robots can't judge, and the robots have no spirituality. So, going back to what we were talking about with regards to why people go to work, they do it to give their lives meaning. And I think the important thing is for us to focus on that meaning because that then becomes part of being resilient.
Mm.
Let me define what resilience is, because everybody's talking about it. Oh, yeah, grit, mental toughness. It's not. It's having that focus and that understanding that life is meaningful, and it's having a realistic optimism. Yeah, I'm in a situation that I find myself in at the moment. It's not ideal, but I've got to make the most of it. So how can I adapt creatively? Sorry, how can I adapt creatively to make the best of a bad job? Or how can I build upon my situation to make it even better? So that's what resilience is all about. It's not about bouncing backwards, forwards, sideways.
Yeah.
It's about being very, very focused on giving your life the meaning that it deserves.
So for those who don't know, man, I gotta say, being the director of EI for Change, I was taking a moment of looking at the organization, the outfit. It's pretty cool, pretty impressive. But this was for the managers here. Let's say someone decides to pick up a copy of the authority guide. They understand the tenets in within. There you go. It's available now. But you're managing a team, and a team has different levels of individuals with different levels of emotional resilience. What can managers do using what they've learned through your book to apply the principles in a way that empowers a team at, I don't say the same level, but at an equitable level to make sure to move any kind of challenges forward?
Well, I think the important thing for any leader to do is to recognize that whenever we go through some form of change, and we're going through change all the time, people are on an emotional journey. They're transitioning through change, and they will go through an emotional set of phases until they come out the other side. Now, a lot of those emotions can be quite intense and can be quite distracting. So a good leader will look at each individual in the team and say, what is that I can do to help? A lot of leaders may find themselves coming through the change curve very, very quickly and popping out the other side. They will then look back at their other people and kind of drag them kicking and screaming along the change curve. Well, no, what they need to do is to recognize where people are on the change curve and to interact with them in an appropriate way, depending upon what that person needs, rather than what the organization needs or what the leader needs. And by so doing, the leader will get what they need and the organization will get what it needs.
Mm.
And there is a whole chapter in the book based upon John Fisher's personal transition through change curve, which is very similar to the grievance change curve. But John Fisher's change curve is much more detailed and much, much more focused on the business environment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What can we do today to shift our mindset to deal with stress, to improve our resilience?
Well, the first thing to do is to recognize what it is that you're in control of, because those are the things that you can work with, you can change, you can manage. The other important thing is to recognize the things that you're not in control of. There are going to be certain things in your life that you have absolutely no control over whatsoever. You've just got to accept it. You've just got to recognize it. Now, I don't want to get political here, Flobo, but politics is a great one for reducing people's resilience and increasing people's stress levels. And we can look on social media and we'll see loads and loads of posts coming up with a bit of a negative focus around what's going on in the world. What is it that you can do about it? Well, the first thing you can do is to switch your device off and go and do something completely different. Because no matter what you think about it, no matter what you feel about it, there is nothing that you can do. And if there is something that you can do and you recognize what it is that you can do, and it drives you forward and motivates you to do something differently, go and do it.
I love the exclamation point there. Robin, I love our conversation because on the surface, I was like, man, this may be a bunch of things that may be seen beyond reach, but everything we discussed today seems pretty matter of fact. And I appreciate that anyone today can pick up the authority guide and start their emotional resilience journey right in that very moment. But here's the fun part. If someone's watching or listening or reading the book and they want to connect with you, they want to know more about this, how they go about doing that?
Well, first of all, if they've got the book, there are all my contact details within the foreword, so they will have access to them. But anybody listening to this, they can contact me on LinkedIn. I was on LinkedIn very, very early on, so my URL is Robin Hills. So find me that way, or you can contact me through my website, eiforchange.com, or https://emotional.intelligence.courses.
That's easy peasy. I love that. Thank you so much for being on Global Book Network. Appreciate your time.